Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our webinar series. Today's episode is episode 4, Collaborate Like a Pro. I hope everyone had a really great holiday and a happy new year. We haven't had a webinar in the last couple of weeks, so welcome back. Um, as always, I'm your host, Andrew Suter. I provide direct support for Faster Law. If you guys have any questions throughout this webinar, feel free to type them into the chat box. It's located at the bottom of your window. You can just type it in there, and I'll be holding all questions until the end, but just type it in there to document it, and then at the end, I'll come back and answer any questions that you guys have. If I don't have time to answer all of the questions, then I will post them in our webinar archive with their answers once I get this posted to our webinar archive after we're done here. So I'll get you guys a link for that at the end of the webinar here. But let's just go ahead and jump right in. Oops. So today's episode, again, is episode 4, Collaborate Like a Pro. We're going to just cover some collaborative tools that you can use to really work efficiently as a team. So today we're going to cover how to share links to documents internally. We're going to cover how to compare different versions of the same document. So for changes that multiple people have made to the same document, we'll be able to compare those documents. We're going to cover how to track outgoing requests to third parties. We're going to cover a new feature of ours, split allocations. That's going to be for splitting up bill payments to multiple attorneys for like compensation and bonus purposes, that sort of thing. I will mention the new feature split allocations is only available in our beta version. So if you're running an older version of Faster Suite, our stable version, or anything before one of our November releases, you probably don't have this feature. You can always update to our beta version by downloading from our website. That'll give you access to this new feature as well as some other stuff. But then the last thing we're going to cover after that is custom reporting. So I'll just go ahead and jump right in here to our first topic, which is how to share links to documents internally. So historically, how we've always shared documents, if you have your documents on a file server or something like that, and you edit a document that you want to send out to a colleague, what you've probably done is sent them an email with a document as an attachment, or told them, go into the file server to this folder and pull up this document. Now, while sharing documents that way is great, those really aren't the most efficient ways that we can do that. Sharing an attachment is fine, but when you send it to a person, if they make changes to it, they have to send it back to you as a separate document. And if you're sharing with multiple people, like let's say you send a document out to 3 different people, each of them may make their own changes to the document and then send it back as an attachment on that email. So now, we've got 4+ different versions of the same document all floating around with different changes made on them. Hard to keep track of, exactly what document and what changes are the ones that we want to use. And if you're telling them to just go to a folder, it's going to be a little bit difficult if you have a lot of folders and you're not really specific where that document is. For them to navigate through the folders could take a few seconds or even a couple minutes if they're not exactly sure where to go. So that could also be a little bit time consuming and not the best way to share a document. So we actually have a share tool built into Faster Suite, so we can really easily share links to documents that we have stored in the A drive. So for example, I'm just going to go into my A drive here into the open folder. Then I'm going to go into Aaron Aronson, and I've set up a matter here, webinar collaborate like a pro, and I've put some folders and documents in here. Let's say I'm in this other files folder and I've been working on this test document right here. Here's my document. I edited it, put some text in here. And now I want to share this with some colleagues. What I can do is actually just select this document in Windows File Explorer and drag it up to our ribbon. We're going to put it over the Documents tab to expand it, and then just drop it right on top of this share button right here. When I do that, you'll get a notification on the bottom right-hand side of the screen that says links copied to clipboard. And so what that means is we can go into anything like an email like this or a chat program, something like that, and just hit Control-V to paste a link to that document. Now, when we do this, the document is basically, if someone clicks this link, it's going to open the document directly from Faster Drive. When we click on it, it will open a page that looks like this, and then it's going to just open the document after that. So it's opening it directly from the A drive, so they're always opening the document right from Clio with the most recent version. That way, I send this out to 3 different people. Person 1 edits it, hits save, it saves it right back to Clio. The next person to click that link pulls up the same document with those changes in it. So it'll keep track of all your versions, track who's making the changes, all that stuff. So just a much more efficient way of collaboratively working on documents. Now, there are a couple of things that we can do here with this tool. So I just shared one document. It'll give you the folder path here and then a link to the document. There are some other things we can do too. So for example, if I go back to our A drive, I can actually share an entire folder. So if I just drag this other files folder up here, drop it on the share button, then I can paste a link to that folder. And when someone clicks on this, it'll just actually open up the folder that contains any files that I wanted to share. So we can link documents and folders. We can also share multiple files and folders. So if I wanted to share all three of these documents and the contents of this other folder, I can just select them all in Windows File Explorer in the A drive and drag them all up to the share button. This link that it copies, when we paste this into an email, we'll just have more links now. So a link to each document and the folder. It's going to function exactly the same way. We just have multiple links now. So a lot of different things that we can do, different ways to share here using that share button. So I just wanted to cover that really quickly first. Let's go ahead and move on to how to compare different versions of the same document. So if we go back over here to our A drive, this first test document here, I actually originally created with just one line of text, and then I went back and edited it a couple times. Now, if other people are editing this document, you might not know exactly what has happened on the document. You create it, you come back later, and it's completely different. What happened? Who changed it? And what changes did they make? When did those changes take place? Luckily for us, Clio keeps track of the entire version history of a document. So using some fancy coding, we were able to build a tool that basically connects Clio's document history to Microsoft Word's legal blackline feature. We're going to activate this feature the same way as we did the share button. We can just grab the document, drag it up to the Documents tab, and drop it on our other button here that says Compare. Now, when we do this, it's going to bring up our compare interface. So you'll see we have the original file up top, the modified file on bottom. If we drag a document to that button, it's going to populate the same document in both fields, and we'll be able to select using the dropdown below it which version we want to compare to which version. So we can compare any version that we'd like. In this case, I'm just going to compare version 4 to version 5. Those were automatically selected. I'll just hit compare. And it's going to open it up in Microsoft Word as a legal blackline. So on the right-hand side, we've got both documents. The top one is the original. The bottom one is the revised document. On the left, we have a list of changes that we made, or that were made rather, on this document. And then in the middle, we have just a visual representation of what was done. So we can see that I had a sentence here that I didn't particularly like, so we removed it. So really great way of seeing who has made what changes to a document and in what versions those changes took place. We can save this comparison if we'd like, or we can just close out of it without saving. Now, again, we can compare any two different versions of a document. So we could do version 2 to version 4 and compare that, and it'll just show what changed between those two versions, again, as a legal blackline. I added that sentence in this one and removed some text from that first line there that wasn't necessary. Or we could just say, I want to see what happened between the original and the current version by comparing version 1 to the latest version. And that will just do a legal blackline between those two versions and show us everything that has changed. So we removed the text, added this line of text, and then added this line of text here as well. So really powerful tool for seeing what changes happen. If you send a document out to a client and then save a new version after they send it back, maybe revised or something like that, you can run it through this tool to see what they changed, that sort of thing. Or again, if you're collaboratively working on a document internally, you can see what other users at your firm have made those changes. It'll show you who saved what version and the date and time that the version was saved here in the dropdown. So really easy to keep track of that stuff. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on now to tracking outgoing requests to third parties. This is another collaborative tool that we built in. It's designed to do exactly what it says, keep track of requests that you send to third parties. So things like medical records that you might request from a doctor, anything like that. Clio doesn't really have a great way of keeping track of that stuff. You might be able to put some notes on the account or like a task saying, check to see if we've received these documents, that sort of thing, but nothing to really keep track of everything. So into Faster Suite, we built a request tracker tool. And that tool is located under New on the ribbon, and it's going to be on the right-hand side here, just labeled Request Tracker. So when I open this up, it brings up our Request Tracker interface. This first page Not a lot of information here. We can tell it to skip this page automatically the next time we launch it if we'd like. I'm just going to go ahead and hit next over here, and that'll bring us to a list of all of our matters in Clio. So basically, we're just going to select the matter that this particular request is related to, or the one that we want to check the current requests for. So I'm going to pull up that webinar, the webinar matter again here, and I'm just going to check the box on the left-hand side and hit next. Now on this screen where it says manage requests for this matter, this is where any outstanding request would show up. So if someone at my firm had created a request, they requested those medical records from that doctor, we would be able to come here and see, who the provider is, what type of request it was, the status of the request, any next steps, and basically like the date that different things were done. It was requested on this date, received on this date, etc. In this case, we don't have a request, so I'm going to go ahead and create one. We can do that by clicking the button in the top right here that says New. And when we click on that, it'll bring us to our Edit Request page. And we can add all kinds of stuff in here. So we've got Overview, Providers, Records, Checks, Bills, Dates, and Attachments. Let's go ahead and start with Overview. This is where we'll just type the subject, medical records from doctor. The status is we maybe just requested it. We'll type that in here. If we can type, which I apparently cannot. Next steps, maybe just wait for documents or something like that. And then any notes that we would like. Maybe this is for, Fairview Hospital or something like that. So we filled out our overview. Now we can move on to providers, records, checks, bills, dates, and attachments. These are all just kind of subcategories. The records, checks, and bills categories will allow us to enter just the information that shows up on those screens. So records, we can say the name of the record, some dates for the records, and then any notes. Checks, we can add, the check, the amount, the check number, notes, and then bills, we can say the name of the bill, amount, bill number, and notes. The other fields here, providers, dates, and attachments, are a little bit different. So providers will allow us to pull information from Clio. So we can say the role of this contact is he's the doctor. And we can actually pull him up as a as a contact in Clio. So let's say we have him saved in Clio. Maybe it's Claire Wallace here is the provider for this request that we're making. We can add, Claire's account number here, 456789123, and then add some notes to it. She was the primary doctor on this. On this matter, something like that. Any notes we want. So basically the main thing is that we can add a contact from Clio to the providers page. We also have dates down here, which again functions a little bit differently. This one will let us keep track of the dates that certain things happen. So for example, I'm just creating this request. So I'm going to say I requested this on today's date. So requested on 1/8. Again, we might select Claire here. I think it was Claire Vance or something like that. Either way, we can set that same contact or a different contact here under contact and then add notes. The next person that comes in here will be able to say, I received the documents or I submitted the documents, approved, rejected, completed, etc. As things happen on this request, we can add them here. The final tab here is attachments. Once we receive a document from this request, we can save it into the A drive and then add it to the attachments page. So, we've received these documents, we've saved it into the webinar file. We just click here and it'll actually bring up our browse interface. It would open up to like the last folder we were in here, that we were in, which in this case, I guess in my case, is the same folder where the documents might be. We can say, I received this test document from them, and that'll add it here. I can, add some notes here if I'd like, and then anyone can come in here and click that link to see the document that was received. So we can attach the documents that we receive right to the request there. We obviously wouldn't do this until after we receive them. So in this case, it doesn't make sense since we just requested, but once we do get them, we can put them there. Once we're done adding all of our stuff here, we just hit save, and this information actually gets saved into Clio. So anyone else that comes into the request tracker will be able to view this request that we just created. So if someone else receives these documents, they would just view it here. They can click on it, hit edit, and then say maybe I received these documents, on whatever date, and that will add it to the overview here if they selected the date. So just a really great way of keeping track of outgoing requests to third parties. Wanted to cover that here today. Let's go ahead and move on to our next feature here, which is split allocations. So I mentioned split allocations is a new feature, and it's designed to, again, basically split up bill payments to multiple people at your firm for compensation or bonus tracking, anything that you want to do like that. So, let's say we get a $10,000 bill, we bill it out to the client, they pay it, and for bonus purposes, attorney X gets 5% of that, attorney Y gets 10% of that, et cetera. We can basically configure Faster Suite with that, that specific split for that matter, and then run the split allocations tool to just automatically cut up that part, or I'm sorry, that payment. It'll also remove things like interest, tax, expenses, things like that. If you hire an expert and that costs $2,000, when the client pays us to reimburse that, we don't want to take that $2,000 and account for that with our compensation. So split allocations will remove it. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we use this. Now, to show you this, I'm actually going to show you a bill that I've created in Clio first. So I'll pull up Clio here, and I'm going to go to our webinar matter. So under bills, I created a bill. It's under paid right now. This is important to note because split allocations will only let you split bills that have been paid in full. And that's because we do adjust the amount for the expenses, for the tax, for things like that. Until the bill is paid in full, we don't know exactly what those payments are for because we can't, assign specific payments to specific activities on a bill. So we wait for it to be paid in full before we actually want to split those allocations. So again, this bill is marked as paid, and I'll show you the actual bill here. I have, several different things on here. I've got, I was doing work for 3.5 hours at $450 an hour. I was just doing a test for 6 hours, $200 an hour, working on stuff, 10 hours, $65 an hour. And then I have a reimbursable expense here that I just called expense for $500. So the total of the bill was $3,925. And we did receive a payment today for that full amount. So we now want to go ahead and split that between our attorneys that were working on this matter. And we're going to do that with our split allocations feature. So first, we're going to need to configure the split for this matter. What we're going to do is go up to New on the ribbon up top, and then we're going to go over here to Split Allocations. It's the little percent icon. We'll click the drop down here, and we're just going to click on Configure. That'll give us a list of all of our matters in Clio. Anything that is currently configured is going to show up at the top. You'll see I did already configure this one, so I'm just going to select it by clicking on it or checking the box on the left-hand side and hit Next. Now, I had this set up with Managing Partner, Human Resources in here, just kind of as an example. That doesn't really make sense, so I'm going to go ahead and change this a little bit. Instead, I'm going to put maybe Alex Attorney gets 10% here, and then let's say Samantha Attorney gets 20% because she is the responsible attorney on the matter. Now, you'll see here that I can add the recipient of the split allocation on the left. I can configure what percent they get in the middle here, and then I can add notes on the right. It's important to note this doesn't have to and probably should not add up to 100%. It can add up to any number you want, even greater than 100% if you wanted to do that for some reason. Other things on this screen though, the one setting in the top left, split allocations using the amount paid minus expenses is our default. So by default, it's going to take out any expenses, like I mentioned, that are reimbursable. It'll also take out the tax and the interest and that sort of thing. However, if we don't want to do that, we can also just do the total amount paid. So that won't remove any of that stuff. It'll just be the full amount of the bill when we split it. But I'm going to set this back to minus expenses just for illustrative purposes here. So now that we've configured it how we want, these two attorneys each get a separate amount. We've added our notes. I'm just going to go ahead and hit Next. And that will save that configuration into our split allocations feature. Now what we would do normally is just do work on the matter, bill the client, get payments, and then whenever the matter is finished, or whenever, maybe at the end of the month, at the end of each month, we maybe split these out for tracking purposes, we would go ahead and launch split allocations. We can do that from the window right here, or if we just finish and we continue working on the matter and want to come back later, we'll just go back to the new button on the ribbon and then click the drop down again under split allocations. And this time we're going to click execute. So when we click execute, what it's going to do is show us all of our fully paid invoices for all of the matters that we have configured through split allocations. So in this case, I only have the one bill for the one matter. If I had other bills for this matter, they would show up here. If I had other bills for other matters that were configured, those would also show up here. So we can split as many as we'd like all at one time. Again, in this case, I just have the one bill that's been paid in full. So we just see the one here. We can see all kinds of information about it, just general stuff, the name of the matter, the bill number, the amount of the bill, that sort of thing. But to split it, what we're actually going to do is just check the box, and then hit the split button in the bottom right. Now, we had 4 activities on this bill, and we had 2 users that had that split. So what it's going to do is actually just create this spreadsheet with some different line items in it. It's opening on my other screen over here. Okay, so here we go. We had the 1 bill and we had the 2 users. So again, it just saves it into this folder, which is saved in the A drive, but it's saved in just a kind of a hidden spot in an Alpha Drive folder called split allocations for the date. So when it generates it here, we can just open up the spreadsheet and take a look at how it split it. So again, it's going to give us all the information here: the client, the matter number, the matter description, the bill number, any other information about the bill here. Now it's going to show us the total bill amount here, but then we also have the bill amount adjusted. So this is the amount minus those expenses. If you remember from our invoice, we had a $500 expense that it's a reimbursable expense, so we don't want to split that out to our workers here. So it removes that from the amount before it splits it. So it adjusts the $39.25 down to $34.25. We then have the 2 recipients on our bill, the amount that they're receiving these allocations at, and then the amount that they're going to get based on the adjusted amount and how much they're getting. So you'll see it took the $34.25. We got 10% of it, which is $342.50. Then Samantha got 20% of $34.25, which is $685. So we have all this information here, and we can do whatever we want with it, whether it's pasted into another spreadsheet, build out this spreadsheet for for the compensation or whatever for this matter, whatever we want to do. Anything that we want to do with this, that's going to be available there. Again, it is saved into the A drive here. If you ever wanted to find it, like let's say you close out of it and you close this window, it's going to be under closed in a folder called Alpha Drive, split allocations, and then it's going to be organized by date. So we've got our 2020 stuff, January, and today's the 8th. So here's that spreadsheet again, if you ever want to find it after the fact. Now, it is important to note that after we split a bill, it's going to be removed from our split allocations window. That way we don't accidentally, allocate those payments twice. So there's that feature. Let's go ahead and move on to our custom reporting feature. Now, our custom reporting isn't necessarily just for collaborative work. We can really generate any custom report that we want using any information in Clio, but it does have applications with maybe assigning work to different people based on work history, that sort of thing. So kind of just collaboratively determining what work should be done and by whom. Now, the custom reporting tool is also going to be located under New on the ribbon, and it's going to be on the far right. It's just labeled Report right here. So when we click on this, it's going to bring up our reporting interface, and it'll pop right up, but it's going to be empty. We have a bunch of tabs across the top with different reports that we've built, and each of these, once we pull it up, will be customizable as much as we want. So all we really do is just select one of these reports, and then we can customize it afterwards. In this case, I just clicked on potential revenue, and then I want to view that by employee. It will take a little bit there. You saw it refreshing. To refresh the information from Clio, we always want to make sure that the information we're using for reporting is accurate. So we do that refresh right when we pull up the report, just to make sure we're using the most recent information. Depending on how much you have in Clio, it could potentially take a little bit, but it will eventually just pop up here and let you manage the report itself. So in this case, again, I pulled up the potential revenue by employee report, and we'll see that it put a graph on the left-hand side. We have a couple of tabs here. So we've got chart and raw data. So we can flip back and forth between these to view it as a chart or as a spreadsheet. I will also mention that if we're looking at the chart, this is completely customizable how we view this. So we can do it as columns or rows. We can do it as an area graph, as a line graph, and just basically change how all of our stuff is displayed here for the graph. The raw data, we can then copy and paste into a spreadsheet if we'd like in Excel if we wanted to actually work with this further. But we can actually do a lot of this just right on this interface on the right-hand side. So again, this is going to function basically just like a pivot chart. We've got all of the information that we can pull from Clio in the top here. And then we've got different sections here at the bottom. So we've got filters, column and row labels, and then the value of that we're measuring. So in this case, you'll see that our column labels are activity type, which is time entry, expense entry, hard cost entry, and then whether a bill exists, which we have true and false under each of those, or would if we had any of those entries for these ones. Then in our rows, we've got the date and the user. So on the left-hand side, you'll see 2020 broken down into January, and we've got Andrew Suter and Nolan Moffat here. And then in the middle, we have all of our data here, which is in the bottom right, sum of activity total. So that's what this graph specifically is measuring. We can then take that information and use it however we want, or we can adjust how it's displayed in the bottom. So what we can do is we can add and remove things just by dragging and dropping them here into these things in the bottom. If you use things like matter ID or matter number, which I just did by mistake, it's going to take a second to populate. It might look like it's frozen for a second, but it's just basically pulling all that information. We have like thousands of matters in Clio, so it's basically pulling every single matter ID, which is going to take a second here. I apologize about this. I didn't mean to grab that one. Again, I apologize that happened. I grabbed it by mistake, but let's just go back to our reporting tool here. So that basically covered how to work with the the reporting tool there and customize the chart. The next thing I wanted to show you is actually one of our reports that we have pre-made. It's our next task report. So this is really cool for keeping track of who's working on what and what work needs to be done. I'm going to click on that. It's going to take a second to load data from Clio here. And then it's going to pull up this next task report. So basically what this is going to show is a list of our matters. We're going to be able to filter or sort it. And it's going to show basically the next task that's due on each matter and like who the responsible attorney is on that matter. So now that it's loaded, we'll see this list on the left. Here's a matter for managing partner. There's the client, the matter number, description of the matter. We'll see that it is open and that there is no task due on this matter. So we can basically look through all of our matters here, or we can filter it using these filter buttons, or we can add additional information to sort and filter by on the right-hand side. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and filter the, actually, I'm going to shorten this field here so we can see everything on one screen here. First, I'm going to filter by the matter status, and I just want to see open matters. Now, maybe we only want to see matters for a certain client as well. Let's go ahead and look just at Aaron Aronson. So you'll see Aaron Aronson has 2 matters that are open. There's arson of 4 sheds, and then today's webinar matter that I created. We can also see that on his arson of 4 sheds matter, we have a task due called review this email, and that it's due on November 5th, so it's actually a little bit overdue, but it's the next task that's due on this matter that hasn't been completed. So based on this, let's maybe filter this a little less specifically. Maybe not Aaron Aronson, but let's actually add on the right-hand side whether task exists. So that'll actually, when we click this button, it'll add a column to this list that says task exists, and we're going to have basically true or false. You'll see that ones that do have a task due are going to have a checkbox there. So let's actually just look at all of our tasks that are due. We can click the filter icon here, just click true, and now it's just going to show us all of the tasks that are due for all of our matters that are open based on those filter settings that I had set up. So we can see that on this matter, we have a test that we have to do some work. On this one, we have we have to do some work that's due on here. On this one, we've just got this ASDF task due at this time, etc. So really easy to keep track of everything that's going on here. We can also, I should mention, sort things by any of these columns. Just by clicking on the column, it'll sort by responsible attorney, by client, however we want to do it. We could also sort by due date so we can see what's really overdue. This one was due in 2017. We should probably get on that one. All the way up to, or we could filter it the other way and see our most recent tasks that are due at the top there. So again, we can use any of this information over on the right-hand side as a column, and then we can sort and filter it and view it here on the left. So this is a really useful tool for keeping track of what work needs to be done and by whom. So really useful for collaborative work if you're assigning tasks to different people and really making use of the task function in Clio. So we have a bunch of other reports in here. Feel free to check them out. Time allocation reports, time worked reports. If you guys want a custom report that doesn't show up here or you're not able to build it using our interface here, reach out to us. We will build you a custom report. That, I guess, service is not included in FasterSuite though. So it would be just a one-time development cost to build the report for you. And then once we build it, we'll actually add it to the reporting feature here, and every FasterSuite customer can get access to it. So if there's another firm that you work with that also wants that report, you might be able to split the cost. Just contact us for a quote. We'll build it for you and get it built in here. Now, that covers pretty much all of the features that I wanted to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and move into questions. Let's take a look at our chat log and see what we've got here. The first question I have here is, why would we need to share internally versus just accessing the A drive? So accessing the A drive is just fine. You know, if I work on a document and then want to tell Michael, you know, I worked on this document, I can just say, I worked on this document for John Smith. It's in this folder, and he can just go grab it through the A drive. That's entirely fine, and it'll work just fine. It'll function the same way as sending a link. You know, when he accesses it that way, it will save it directly back to Clio, and the next person that accesses it will have access to those changes as well. The share button is basically designed to have to, or to save you from having to, you know, make those steps of finding the document in the A drive. Again, if you have, you know, tons of folders, let's say John Smith has 15 different folders in his Matter folder, and then each of those is organized into another 15 folders, you might have to be really specific about where that's located in order for the person that you're sending it to find it. Whereas you could just send the link and they can just click that link. It's just much easier. So either way works. The share button is just a little bit faster and easier. The next question here is, how do you view requests that have been entered into Clio? Not all of our staff are able to run FasterSuite at this time. So to use the request tracker, you will need access to FasterSuite. The information is saved in Clio, but it's not in a format that you would be able to view without FasterSuite. So unfortunately, those people that don't have FasterSuite, they would need access to FasterSuite in order to view those requests. Another question here is, did the bill total include taxes or no? Taxes will be removed, so will interest, expenses, that sort of thing. So all that stuff gets removed if you choose to remove it. Another question here is, the split allocation reflected on Clio or just through the Excel file? It's just going to be through the Excel file. We don't actually change any of the data in Clio. We just basically cut it up and give you access to it through that Excel file, so you don't have to manually make those calculations or anything like that. Let's see here. So, oh, and it looks like Tony had actually answered that question in our chat as well. Let's see here. I have a question here. I'm looking at the reporting function by practice area and only see one of our practice areas listed. Is it not pulling the others, or do I maybe have the wrong thing clicked? Chances are you have the wrong thing clicked. I would actually have to take a look at this. So Daniel, go ahead and shoot me an email after this. I'll get you my contact information on the next slide here, and you can reach out to me and I'll take a look at it on your computer there. But that covers all the questions that we have here. So a couple things that I want to cover here. Number one is install a trial of FasterSuite. If you don't currently use FasterSuite, you can always get it from our download page. Or if you want to update to the beta, that includes the split allocations feature, as well as a brand new feature that we have coming called Faster Snippets that's really cool. You can download from our website and check out that beta there. Otherwise, that beta is going to be released. We're planning on next Wednesday, the 15th. And you will be able to download it, the stable version from our website at that time. So if you want to wait, you can certainly do that. If you came into this this webinar halfway through or something like that, or you want to review something that you missed, it is going to be available on our webinar archive here, probably within the next couple hours or so, but definitely by tomorrow. So feel free to come back and review it there. Any questions that I receive after the fact, maybe through email or something like that, I will post those on that webinar archive as well, and you can view the answers and the questions there. Now, if you like the webinar or you like using FasterSuite, definitely spread the word, tell your friends. You know, if you have someone at your firm that also uses FasterSuite that's not attending these webinars and you think it's really useful, let them know. Or if you have a friend at a different firm that uses Clio but not FasterSuite, let them know how much you like FasterSuite. We'd definitely appreciate it. If you have any questions or really anything related to FasterSuite or the webinars at all, feel free to contact us at help@fasterlaw.com. We can help you out in whatever way that you need. Let's take a look at what's coming up for our webinars. So next week, we're actually going to be covering Faster Snippets. So Faster Snippets is that brand new feature that I talked about. It is a really powerful tool, really cool. I think all of you are really going to like it. It has a ton of different applications. It's basically just, it's like using text snippets from Clio in any application, but you can also automatically pull Clio information. You can generate really as much text as you want. You can automatically fill out forms, generate full emails, tons of really useful applications for this feature. So definitely check back next week. And that's just going to be basically an in-depth tutorial on that new feature, Faster Snippets. So how to configure it, how to use it, some best practices for setting it up for form filling, things like that. Really useful stuff. Definitely make sure to check back next week. After that, on the 22nd, we've got advanced faster mail training. We're just going to cover some, advanced settings for faster mail, best practices for setting it up for your firm, things like that. On the 29th, we've got migrate your documents to Clio. That's just going to be an in-depth training on our migration tools. So if you have documents in Dropbox or a file server and you want to move them into Clio, definitely check with us on the 29th, and we'll show you how to really easily do that. And then in February on the 5th, we've got automated drafting process scheduled. So that'll show you basically, the full pipeline of drafting a process from creating it to filing it, how to automate that whole process. So if you do a lot of document drafting, definitely check that webinar out. But that really concludes our webinar here today. So thanks everyone for attending. Today's episode, again, was episode 4, Collaborate Like a Pro. This is Andrew Suter, and I'm signing off. Thanks, guys.